The world's wealth is so unevenly distributed. Only 1% holds nearly half of all the money. Now flip that coin. The poorest half of the world survives by with as small as 0.75% of the wealth. It's like comparing a towering skyscraper to a humble cottage. Now, it's easy to assume that those sitting atop mountains of cash simply lucked into it, either by birthright or by hitting the jackpot. But among the top 80 wealthiest individuals, only 11 inherited their fortunes. The rest, they rolled up their sleeves and hustled hard to earn every penny. So, what's the secret sauce that sets the affluent apart from the struggling? Well, to know that you need to stick around for this video, where we will discuss the 7 things that separate the rich from the poor. Imagine 2 friends, James and Gary, who have similar IQs, come from middle-class families, and live in the same city. Yet James becomes rich, while Gary struggles financially. Let's see why. Gary, after a day's work, kicks back on the couch, remote in hand, and tunes into his favorite TV shows for hours on end. When the television loses its allure, he flips open his phone, delving into the endless scroll of social media feeds on Facebook and Instagram, seeking a digital escape from the day's grind. Now, shift the scene to James. As soon as he walks through the door, he takes a moment to unwind and recharge. But rather than zoning out in front of the screen, James dives headfirst into a world of knowledge and growth. He cracks open books, takes online courses, and immerses himself in learning about cutting-edge technologies like AI and other emerging trends. Despite already holding a master's degree, James is hungry for more. He knows that to reach the pinnacles of success, he must continuously sharpen his skills and expand his expertise. What sets James apart is his relentless pursuit of self-improvement, fueled by the examples set by gurus of industry like Warren Buffett, Jeff Bezos, and Mark Cuban. These icons didn't achieve greatness by coasting on autopilot. They invested heavily in reading, learning, and staying ahead of the curve. And James? He's following in their footsteps, 1 book, 1 course, and 1 late-night study session at a time, all with the goal of propelling himself up the corporate ladder at lightning speed. 1. The first key difference is that the rich never stop learning. The next day at work, Gary gets a $500 bonus, which is way less than what his co-workers got. He feels upset and goes to his boss to complain, mentioning he's been working there for 10 years and expected more. But his boss tells him his work hasn't been as good as it used to be, and he hasn't been helping the team much. On the other hand, James is working hard on his project when his boss gives him an envelope. Inside, James finds a $10,000 check with his name on it. The difference is that James is always learning and working hard, making important contributions at work, while Gary hasn't been as proactive in improving himself. Propels him to greater heights of success, leaving Gary trailing behind in his wake. 2. Rich people pay them first. One night after work, Gary spots an ad for the latest $800 phone while watching TV. Excited, he rushes to buy it as soon as he gets his paycheck the following week. But as he considers this purchase, after paying his bills, rent, utilities, and credit card debt, Gary checks his balance at the end of the month, only to find it lower than before. He's puzzled about where all his money went. In contrast, when James receives his paycheck, $11,000 automatically zips into a savings account he can't easily dip into. Once his savings are squared away, James takes care of his mortgage and utilities. When the month winds down, James grins as he checks his bank balance, noticing it's swelled up nicely, adding to his wealth. The contrast couldn't be clearer. While Gary splurges on instant gratification, James makes saving and smart investments his top priority, aiming to grow his wealth steadily over time. 3. Rich. Understand the importance of delayed gratification. Gary feels scared every morning before work. To cope, he buys a $5 Starbucks drink like a Frappuccino to give him energy. He thinks it's necessary to spend this money to get through the day. Meanwhile, James passes by Starbucks every day on his way to work. Instead of spending money there, he drinks the free coffee available at his workplace. It might not taste as good as Starbucks, but over a year, that's $1,500. He plans to use this money to take a special trip to Bali with his wife. James gets the idea of waiting for good things, something rich people often do. Along with job, education, where you live, and whether you're a guy or a girl, being able to hold off on quick fun stuff is a big sign you might get rich. People who can see the big picture and wait for better stuff later are less likely to jump at short-term fun. For James, saying no to a latte every day wasn't hard. He could picture all the amazing stuff he could do in Bali with his wife and pals instead. This way of thinking, focusing on big goals down the road instead of small pleasures now, helps make you successful with money. 4. Rich understand that the world is changing. In a tough economic climate where companies are forced to make cuts, both Gary and James find themselves out of a job. Gary, who's been skating by with minimal effort at work, is thrown into a panic. He frets about how he'll cover rent, bills, and debts now that his sole source of income has vanished. For Gary, the idea of job security as an employee feels like a shattered illusion. On the flip side, James also faces unemployment but takes a different approach. During his exit interview, his boss commends him as a stellar employee and reveals that he was among the last to be let go after all others had been laid off. Rather than wallowing in despair, James accepts the news with grace. He expresses gratitude to his boss for the opportunities and remains confident in his financial stability despite the setback. The big difference is that James saw how unpredictable job security could be, so he got proactive early on in his career. He didn't just rely on one job, he started his own online business and invested in stocks that pay dividends. Now, these money-making projects are doing well enough to support him while he looks for another job or focuses full-time on his online business. 5. Building multiple income streams. About a week after losing his job, Gary finds himself at home, venting frustrations with his friends about the rough job market. He's feeling pretty down and is skeptical about finding another job. To him, life seems pretty unfair, and he's quick to blame their financial struggles on bad luck and a lack of opportunities. Meanwhile, James, also recently laid off, takes a different approach. Instead of dwelling on the negative, he decides to host a dinner party for his friends. During the meal, James opens up about his recent layoff due to tough economic times. 6. The rich have money work for them. Rich people don't just earn money to buy nice things, they use their money smartly to make even more money. Let's say you suddenly come into $100,000. Now, there are two types of people in this scenario. Gary decides to spend it all on a fancy new car. But here's the thing, cars lose value over time. The moment you drive it off the lot, its worth starts to drop. In about 10 years, that car might be worth $10,000 less each year. And if you try to sell it right away, you might lose an extra 20% because it's considered used. On the other hand, let's look at James. Instead of splurging on a depreciating asset like a car, he chooses to invest his $100,000 in something that appreciates over time, like real estate or stocks. By putting his money into assets that grow in value, James is not only preserving his wealth, but also potentially increasing it. This smart decision allows him to build long-term financial security and even generate passive income in the future. James takes a different route. Instead of blowing it on a car, he looks for an investment that will increase in value over time. With $100,000, they could buy a house and rent it out. Every month, they'd get money from the rent. After 10 years, they might make back the $100,000 they spent on the house. And if they sell it, they could even get more money than they paid for it initially. The trick is to avoid just spending money on things that lose value and instead pick things that can help your money grow over time. 7. The rich play the long-term game. The big difference between rich people and those who aren't so well off is that rich folks are patient. They know that getting wealthy takes time and steady effort. Warren Buffett is a perfect example of this. He's one of the most successful investors ever. But here's the thing. He didn't make most of his money until he was over 50 years old. Even though he started investing when he was just a kid, it took him decades of hard work and smart decisions to build his wealth. This shows us that having patience and thinking long-term are crucial when it comes to getting rich. Too often, people think they can achieve everything in a year or two, but they underestimate what they can accomplish over many years. The key is to stick with it, keep going even when it's tough, and never give up on your goals. It's not always easy, But that's the real story behind success that many people overlook. If you're still here, I'd really appreciate your help in spreading the word by sharing and commenting on today's video. Your support means a lot to me. Thanks for sticking around until the end.